be a good pad split. Let me
Talk
go
to
ahead
me.
and
Let's
pull it
go.
up here.
Janika's going to sell her first house she finds.
Fingers crossed. Okay, so it's 8009
Mm-hmm.
Apple Hill Court,
Okay,
Orlando.
let's
Yep.
go. Okay.
Yes. The only thing is though, it has 7 bedrooms. They have 6 on there, but it's 7 bedrooms. She converted one of the rooms.
Mm-hmm.
It has a septic though.
Sometimes that could work. And I don't say like it can't work. What I would say
Mhm.
is it's a notable thing that you make sure that your individual hosts are aware of because it's up to them to take on the operational component of
Okay.
that. Okay. And I'll bring it up this way. I have plenty of houses that are on septic, but from an operations of the business that you're going to run inside 8009 Apple Hill Court is if they take into account that they're going to have a quarterly maintenance on that and it underwrites into
Okay.
their projections, that's real, right? It's like if you can adopt the understanding that whatever you sell this man or woman investor, you want to be able to cleanly follow up with the second property that you want to propose, right?
Okay.
Like you're married to the investors because what we're pitching on our side is we're selling you a portfolio of these things. You came to me because I understand the nuance of the business that's going into it.
Okay.
You
Makes
following?
sense.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so it's just as simple as an additional expense, right? So like what's
Hmm.
cool about this, Janique, was like you're now becoming the investor, right? You're just saying it's about income and expenses. That's really what it's
Mm-hmm.
always about, right? And so now you say, well, listen, the septic tank is not a deal killer, but we have to understand that every quarter we got to get that tank pumped. How much is that going to cost me? Well, if I get it pumped every quarter, maybe it's $200 every time. Okay, well let's go ahead and put that as part of the spreadsheet. That's an expense that's going to happen
Okay.
every quarter, right? So now that becomes whatever, $800 a year, and now we know, but do the number, are they still getting the return they want? Well, then no problem. We can do septic tank, right?
Yep.
Got
But
it.
if it
Okay.
throws it off, then we know, hey, this might not work for that. So,
Mm-hmm.
So Nico,
Okay.
let's start from the top because I want you to be comfortable in the first part, which is swiping, and then searching
Mm-hmm.
for properties. Okay.
Okay.
How did you search and find this property? What were the criteria that you look for?
Well, this one actually just landed in my lap. Like I said, I was doing an open house at this one. One of the
Uh-huh.
agents is their listing at the office. And while I was there, I'm just looking around. I'm like, all of these bedrooms, and it just kind of clicked like, hey, this could be,
Uh-huh.
a good potential pad split. But I see as far as the ratio, the bedroom to bathroom, that it, that's another concern as well.
What do
It's
you
like
mean?
it's a what, 2 to 1 or the ratio?
So
Well, two
you,
to
you
one
can
isn't.
you can
the
go
two
up
point
to
two
4 to
point three
1.
three to 1.
Yeah. So you can go
Okay.
up to it's like what you're identifying is this moldable clay a good starting point for the
Mm,
investor that's ultimately going to get pitched this property. And you're going to be able to have to comfortably talk through this is a 6'3", 2,500 square feet. And what are the opportunities that we're going to see when we look at
okay.
it into this portfolio of like what net rates are going to be, right? You're the one that's filling in the nuance gap between what they don't know and what you do know.
Hmm.
So the reason
Okay.
I wanted to ask is what was the search criteria that popped up a 6'3", 2,500 in Orlando for 460? And if we understand your search criteria, then we don't have to waste our time looking for a lot of things.
Okay. Okay.
And
So if I was to look for, are you asking like what would I search for if I was searching for a specific pad split property? Like
sure.
what would be the criteria? Well, the first thing is no HOA.
Uh-huh.
And this house it does not have HOA.
Okay.
Um and the amount of bedrooms
Okay.
and bathrooms.
Got it. So when you look at certain search criteria, right? In the Orlando,
Mhm.
I'm gonna duplicate this real quick, and then we're gonna go through um, your search criteria and see if this thing fell within that range. Does that make sense?
Okay.
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 So let's go and do this real quick. So you're driving. So it's Orlando, Florida, right? It's for sale. What's
Mhm.
the price range you're looking at?
Within 3 to, well, that house is 460. I
Mhm.
guess 3 to 5.
Okay. So let's just use 400. Okay.
Okay.
Bed and bath.
At least 3,
Uh-huh.
at least 2.
Okay. And then home type.
Single family.
Okay, doke. So we can do anything that is anything but like anything but manufactured, actually.
Hmm.
And sometimes even in Florida, condos and co-ops could work, but the only problem you run into here is
Hmm.
HOAs.
Okay.
You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So it's like
Yeah.
let's get into the biggest
I'd
options that
say
you have.
and even townhomes usually have
The
HOAs. So
HOA.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it.
I'd say houses and multifamily would be
I
a good
like how you're
start.
thinking.
Multifamily.
Love it. Okay. And this is where you guys kind of get into it, right? We can say no HOA
Hmm.
fees in here. And this is where the realtor juju comes in, right? You have, more insight into this. Square footage,
Hmm.
I put in there a minimum kind of, it depends on the investor, but I'll just say on average, let's say 1,500 square feet.
Okay.
Year built, this is depending upon market. There's some that the big box guys, they avoid anything sub like 1975 because they don't want to deal with cast iron, they don't want to deal with electric. But
Hmm.
again, our investor base, like those little nuanced things, um,
Hmm.
as you hear them talking with GCs and other investors, you just incorporate that into your talk track. You're like, hey, I know other investors may not look for houses, sub 1960. In Atlanta, that's where all the value is, right?
Okay.
Because like I can go ahead and find a property that's made 1963. It may be a $3,000 differential in order to have somebody switch out the cast iron plumbing for
Yeah.
PVC. But
Oh,
again,
okay.
because you're talking about it in that way, you're just building credibility as to
Hmm.
anyone knows what she's looking for, right? So it's like these things that you're telling people to kind of look around corners. This is where the credential building for you is, so that when you start looking at properties, it just makes sense, right?
Okay. Gotcha.
Um, I love stupid searches, right? Like,
Investor friendly.
yeah,
Hmm.
anything in here that's like investor or anything in there that's distress. Like, I don't have a preference for days on Zillow because I just want to see when I do my search, I'm looking for, my God, like we broke it down and we have all of 7 houses on here, right? So the problem is how do we cast a net that's as wide as it can be? But according to what you guys just threw out here, there's 6 properties, 7 properties, 8? It's
Hmm.
8. I can't even do the math. 8 properties that make sense. So I don't know Orlando as well as y'all do. Okay. So help me understand this. Bobby, when you're looking at this, are there areas in town that I can almost say no to?
Based on the 8 you have,
Yeah. So if I'm looking at this dispersion, right, I've got northwest and I've got southeast, essentially. Do those areas make sense for where we should be, could be?
well, based on what criteria? Like you talking about like being by bus, by transportation, or you
Metro.
Yeah, it's kind of
like
any of that. Like, I don't know Orlando enough, but like when you look at some of these locations, do they jump out as, oh, that makes sense?
yeah, I think they all make sense. I mean,
Okay.
you will get some folks, look like Pine Hills is considered to be like a hoodie area. That said, there's
Mhm.
plenty of decent neighborhoods out there, right? And you're
Okay.
going to get cheaper properties, but so, not all of Pine Hills is, hoodie, but there's definitely some areas. So that would be the only thing that I would say. It's like, okay, let's just make sure that whatever does pop up there is in a decent area and neighborhood.
Okay.
Besides that, all those look like potentials.
You
Cool.
say hoodie.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
What would be the correct term? I don't know.
hoodie.
Rough.
Hoodie's right, bro. Yeah, that's
Rough.
that's
Oh,
essentially a real
that's
thing.
very that I like that. I like that. Rough.
Raw, right? So here's why I
Mhm.
say that that's an important thing, right? And I want to show you, I want to show you an example of why I brought this up. Okay, is that when I look at um Jacksonville is a really good example. Okay. So investors flock to Jacksonville because they're like, oh, we can get into Jacksonville, and there's so many houses in Jacksonville that make sense, right?
That are cheap,
Right.
Mm.
but
But
they're also in rough areas.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly, right? It's like the what happened here? The reason why Jacksonville doesn't necessarily work, and for a lot of investors who are late coming into this, was because what they ended up doing was they chased the spreadsheet um, without actually looking at what am I doing? Um, they chased the spreadsheet for individual properties without actually diving into um, what's actually happening at the property itself. Okay. So like that's something's not coming up. So the reason I say this is when I look at PadSplit, right? And I look at our property map. Here's what scares me is that when I talk to investors and they say, where should I buy? I go, well, let's just go look at the map of where we currently have properties. Okay. So in Orlando, right, we actually have a ton of properties. So all these little flags are existing properties. So you can see by previous investors, what road is this big ass road here? I don't know
Uh,
what that is.
that might be I-4. No.
Okay. So you can see um Orange
Oh, that's
Blossom.
Orange Blossom.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So west of Orange Blossom, north of 4, this looks like a quadrant where other investors have come in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like all along, is that 50 or East Colonial? Like
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
you
So
start
see, there's
looking.
Pine Hills right there. See, so there's
Mhm.
a lot in that area-ish.
Right, right. And it's typically because the investors are looking for the same thing that you're looking for, right? Their search box is essentially the same. What I want you to have the nuanced understanding of is like, um, if you have an investor and they're like, I'm going to buy this house, and then they're going to get to this house and they're going to be like, wait a minute, nobody is booking. So this has one room left. This is coming on board. This got 2 rooms left. We're booking at these room rates. So when you go back to your spreadsheet, now you're looking at like 191s or essentially like a doable rate, 190, 175 and higher, 175 to 200 for shared bathrooms is real. South of this area, you start seeing a different set of numbers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then this is important, like 149 to 232, like all of these things are really important because you're ultimately going to have to fill out this sheet in order to get that number, which is your projected monthly, that they can then tell like vacancy and occupancy numbers. Because all of these numbers that you're feeding in based on our existing data, this is the financial discussion. Is the property good? It may be good. Initial conversation for us is like, let's just select one here. Um, let's go cheap. So we're looking at this property here. It's a 4.2 1700. It's cut. And when I look at this property, somebody came in as a flipper, put LVP
Mm-hmm.
flooring in, and just put in a generic flip, right? So the problem I run into from your lens of can I get a property that is already I love a good short sale. Um, is it a good property for an investor? A couple questions need to be asked does your investor, how are they going to buy it? And how are they going to finance it? These are like secondary questions, but like if I'm the buyer, I want to buy 3 or 4 of these things. Here's what I start doing is I start going into the maps and I start looking at lot lines. If I buy this thing at 285 and you're a good realtor and you get this thing to me at 260, right? I'm going to have to refinance this thing after I put money into the house to put up walls and furniture. So for every bedroom, think $800 roughly for furniture for every single one. So that's a CapEx expense that's going to come out of my pocket. And then I'm going to have to put 1 or 2 more walls in to make this thing fit. The reason I love the lot lines is it's because it's a cheat code for finding comps for when I get an ARV
I've never
appraisal,
used that. I like that too. I've never used that.
right?
The
So
lot
like
lines.
it's a quick comp check. This guy's selling his at 384. This one sold at 383. Big ass properties, no, given. I can look in here and see what kind of finishes there are. 330. If I get this thing at 250, 260, then I have enough wiggle room for the capex that I have to put in. And then when I go get a refinancing, I'm going to get 75% of, let's say, anywhere between 360 and 380, 350 and 380. So like this is the range it helps me to gain
Mhm.
what I think that the comp is going to be. So for me, at least I know that like I'm not at market rate. So I have some flexibility. Are you following what I'm saying?
Okay.
So if I am going in here and my God, you come back with a killer deal, negotiate, and I buy this thing at like 260 and it's a 4.2, if I get into the house, I get to see some more pictures, but like I'll have a different way of understanding how many bedrooms this thing can turn into. And that's when you start feeding numbers into this bad boy. Right. So it's like when you read the listing, you'll go back and look at this thing and be like, okay, it is a 4 bedroom, 2 bath, 2 full baths. And then I start looking at, I have a dining room on the first floor. It's a 1210. If I wanted to make this a bedroom, I probably could. Kitchen, living room. I have another living room at 1815. So if I went just using the data that you have here, this to me is a 6.2 easy convert if I don't do anything with the garage.
Hmm. Okay.
What you're looking for is what data do I find on Zillow, Realtor, MLS that I can immediately say that's not really a good fit? And I say it this way. If I were to take a look at the map and I look at the street view, here's the other benefit that you get. I start looking around this way and I'm start looking at what my neighbors are looking like. That dude that's driving a Lincoln and has an American flag and a well manicured lawn and all this other stuff, that would be a little bit of a red flag for me
Mhm.
because I know that somebody's probably a possible Karen living there, right? But so
Okay.
essentially, these are the things that people don't
Yeah.
understand. I like the fact that we have a little bit of more cobble space because if you're
Hmm.
going to put 6 people in here, what's the parking going to look like?
Enough parking. Yeah.
I don't see anybody parking on the street. Is that going to be an issue, right? Do other houses look like they're going to be rentals? Like this is the nuanced data that nobody's giving you, but because you're a well-trained realtor, you have a good view of that, right? So from the satellite view, you're looking at it. Um, could this check off the box for available parking? Could this check off the box for, hidden under the radar? Those are good things that you get out of the straight listing.
Can we go back to the one that the Apple Hill?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and let's do a quick street view of that
Yep.
because
Yeah.
I think that that's an easy like filter that you can
Hmm.
do right off the rip, right? Because I just know, and I think you're starting to get the picture of what these neighborhoods need to look like
Hmm.
to not have neighbor problems. And so the one we just looked at, even if that Lincoln and guy wasn't across the street, I would tell you that this neighborhood seems a little bit too put together, even though there's no
Yeah.
HOA, uh, to have, 7 people living in a house. I
Hmm.
just feel like you're gonna
Hmm.
probably have problems there. But you know the type of areas that like this is why like I like places like when I was actually considering doing my own pad split and I started to look and I thought to myself like places like DeLand, Deltona,
Hmm.
um, places that like are they're not they're not rough, but they're on the edge of growth. They're a little farther out, but there were definitely reasons like for instance, in DeLand, you've got Stetson University.
Hmm.
Uh, and Stetson's it's a very well-known university. Um, but a lot of people that live where our office is, they don't go out there, but a lot of people do live out there, right? People who work in
Yeah.
Lake Erie that will live out in the land. So places like that, I was like, man, if we could find a house here in that 260 range and then in those neighborhoods where things have a little bit more land, it's a little bit more open, a little less manicured, then you're
Mm.
like, oh, I ain't gonna have no problems in this neighborhood.
Hmm.
This
Hmm.
neighborhood kind of looks like that kind of neighborhood. So um,
The
this is all great.
further
This is
you
all
get
great stuff,
away,
Quinn, by the way. This is good,
the
the little
yeah,
distinctions. 'Cause the more repetition we get, the more we're gonna start being able to just identify this. It's gonna become more. it's going to become less spreadsheet. I mean, they're always
Right.
going to be spreadsheet, but it's just like it's kind of an art and a science, like comping a property. So
Exactly.
you're gonna start. What
Exactly.
we're trying to pick up right now is the art. You know,
Yes,
Okay.
this is all
there's
nuance. Exactly, Bob. Exactly. Like this is the differentiator for you and every other realtor that's looking to do this is that you're asking questions like, hey, are you comfortable with the neighbors? Like, I'm not comfortable because they'll tell you that on the spreadsheet it looks like a gem. And then you'll pull up on the street map and you're like, yeah, but like, look at this guy and look at this guy and look at this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like as soon as you activate this property, you're not going to meet the revenue that I projected on this thing, right? Like this property here, the expected revenue is like 110,000 a year, right? I can't get that if the neighbor complains
Yep.
and he's like, yeah, I'm sending code enforcement in because you got 10 cars parked all over the place. And now all of a sudden your revenue falls and screeches to a halt. And they're looking at you like, why'd you sell me this house?
Hmm. Okay.
You get what I'm saying? Like, I want
Yeah.
to set you up for the business that you're buying. I've always joked that, like, you know, Janique was, think about it like selling laundromats. I got to finance the damn thing so I can make enough money and it's going to refinance. And then I got to be able to operate the damn thing so I can meet this number that I
Mm-hmm.
told you it's going to meet. And as soon as I check off those two boxes, you know what they're going to come back and ask for? My next property. That's what I mean. So,
Returning a returning client. Yes.
yeah, like, dude, because essentially they're not going to live in this thing. They're just buying
Yeah.
franchises.
Okay.
And think about it like that. So in this property, the first thing that jumps out to me, it's the most expensive house on the block, right? In this block here. This thing here is
Yeah.
645, but it's also a big ass corner lot over here. So
Mhm.
when I look at this property and I go into it, I don't know if it works for me on two different fronts. Immediately, I would have said no because
Yeah.
on the listing side, this number jumps out. Only reason
Right.
is when I look at $460,000, if I were to just quickly come over to the spreadsheet and I say, hey, ARV for this thing is 460, right? That means that 75% of that's 345. Because like
Okay.
I'm buying a property. When you look at fully renovated properties, I don't have a lot of wiggle room in terms of when I go to finance this thing, right? So like that's just gross. I wish I had more money in 2018. Um, But if I go to look at this house and I'm looking at comps, right?
Mm.
The problem is what's the after repair value going to be or the appraisal going to be? So when I go to put debt on this house, am I leaving $150,000 in this house? And can I even get a loan that makes sense?
Makes sense. Okay. Okay.
But you're
I
on the right
think,
track from
yeah.
this piece, you're on the right track.
Okay.
And the second piece is like, all right, which zip codes? And this is the cheat. Go to here, log on as PadSplit as if you were a member. Nothing, you don't need to do anything. Go in here and start looking at the cities that you know really well and find the zip codes that look delicious. Meaning that like this over here, don't think about
Okay.
it as being saturated. Think about it as these investors actually finish the acquisition, the conversion, and the activation, and they're running successful businesses,
Got it. Okay.
right? Like we're at 6,300 rooms in Atlanta. Orlando's got 600. So there's no saturation conversation going on. There's a problem for occupancy if you've got a dumpster fire of a house. And they're like, well, I put it on your platform, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, but your house is a piece of shit. Our members are still customers. Like, I wouldn't book your house
Yeah.
either, right?
They have a townhome on there. Yeah. Okay.
So it really comes back around to is can you find these people deals because you're a realtor and you know how to underwrite and present a deal to our investors that
Mm-hmm.
would make sense. So one of the things that we can also do is because you're a realtor, you can punch into a house and then almost reverse engineer and back into where the location is and start underwriting that house individually. I've done that with realtors as well. So if I explore the area and I start looking, I can zoom in and kind of figure out what the address on this thing is. So whatever at the corner of Washington and whatever, then I can go back in the prop stream and figure out what they bought it for, what the renovation was. And then that gives you an idea of like, oh, that makes sense, right? is that those are the rough figures that I should be in order to charge a 191. And then when I go into the house, I can look at it and be like, look, I use these pictures as a guidance for the renovation level. So if I look at the pictures and be like, hey, what's it look like on the inside? All granite countertops. He's got, nice counters, fully refurnished kitchen, LVP flooring. And it gives you like a generic idea of what the finish has to be. Because this investor also had to get debt service coverage loans on his property. So the reason he did it to a certain finish is essentially because he understood the financing piece of it. And whatever that was, it worked for him so that he could do that. And then your investor is just going to rinse and repeat that same concept.
Right. So are you saying, just so I can understand, for that property, the financing portion was too high or the price was
Yeah.
too high
So
compared to?
that means that I'm buying this thing at roughly 450.
Mm,
And I'm going to be maxed out on the number of bedrooms in this house because if I were to go look at the listings and we looked at this, right? Let's walk
yeah.
through this. Here's a living room. I can turn that into a bedroom. The reason why is I have an exterior window. So the one of the
Okay.
rules that you have to get comfortable with is every room that you're converting has to have two
A
forms of
window.
egress. At least one
Okay.
window or door that goes to the outside of the house. Think fire code,
Okay.
right? And then the other door would be the whatever wall you set up and it goes into the house. That's your two forms of egress out of that house. So this room here makes that a 7-bedroom. I have a kitchen. Here's like a den area, which I don't think is the same. Is that
That's
the
the
same?
same.
See, this is where I get lost. Realtors look at these pictures like that's the same room. I'm like, I thought that was another room. Um, and then you start looking through the bathrooms. Where am I adding value? Right? How many of these rooms exist that aren't accounted for that in our world is adding another value? So you have to have an eat-in area. So somewhere in here, you would carve this up and it would be, this could be like this dining area here could be a bedroom. I don't think they counted this as a bedroom. It's kind of like a little sitting area.
Yeah,
So that gets me to
that's the
seven.
7.
That gets me to 7 or 8. If I carve this one up here, I could leave it as a common space dining room, or I can convert it if I have to. But this is how you're starting to work at and look at properties in the sense of how many bedrooms will ultimately be in the final product. You following?
So let me see if we're, because I think what Janique was asking. Okay, so number one is obviously in general, Janique, well, the higher the price point, the lower the profitability, just in
Gotcha.
general, right?
Okay.
So the more we pay, right, the more we spend, the less profitable it's going to be. So I think that there's a
Okay.
just at least a level where you got to start thinking like, hey, once properties go past this amount, they start not to become profitable, right? Because you're paying too much, just like you would on a traditional rental, right? Like,
Right.
like back when we were doing a traditional rental, I used to teach you guys the 1% rule, right? Hey,
Mhm.
listen, if
Yep.
if this doesn't bring you, if this doesn't bring $4,600 a month in rent, then it's not going to make sense for what a
To
typical
pay
investor would
for
want, right? So
400,000.
it
Yeah.
just knocks it out, right? So
Okay.
there's that. But then number two, it sounds like, and I'll let Quint kind of give you some more detail about this, but basically there should be a value add component to
Mhm.
the property, because what we're trying to do is, a lot of these guys, not everybody's going to be a cash buyer. So you got
Hmm.
to figure somebody's going to come in, right? And what they're going to want to do, they might come in cash, but at some point, what they're going to do is they're going to refinance.
Yes.
And when they refinance, they want to refinance at a higher valuation than what
Okay.
you've got.
Okay.
And what you've got here is a darn near fully finished
It's
400.
already done.
It's
Yep,
already
that was
done.
my initial question. Yep. What if it's already
Right. And so
okay?
how much
Okay.
more, what he's saying is how much more value could we actually add so
Okay.
that when this person refinances, they could actually pull their money out. Right.
Got it.
And so that's part of the calculation and the kind of the nuance that he talks about, right? So
Mhm.
what's a value add situation? Well, it could be renovating, and it could be adding rooms, right? We're
Mhm.
value adding, right? But a lot of it's going to be that renovation that we're initially going to do. So ideally, let's say somebody comes in and we get it at a below market price because it needs some renovation. So we go in,
Okay.
so that the investor goes in, they buy it, maybe they do a hard money loan on it. Maybe they're not cash, but they're going to do their hard money first. They're going to get some money for renovation. And let's just simple numbers, it's like, okay, they bought it at 100, they're going to get some money for renovation, but they know that when it's done, it's going to be worth 200.
Mm-hmm.
So once it's worth 200, right, and they're done with it, they're going to go back to a
Finance.
lender and say, give me that DSCR loan, give me that rental loan that you're going to give me up to, let's say, 75% cash out on. And that 75% is very important because that ARV, that final value, should include at least a lot of what was spent on the property. And that's the decision the investor is going to have to make,
Okay.
is how much of my initial cash can I get back? Because they want to do another one with you.
Yeah. You got to help them recycle
Okay.
their money.
Got it. Okay.
I love pictures like this, right? Because no one can tell me what the value of the work that I have to put back in, right? Somebody's distressed on this deal. So take this down as an address, Taniqua. This might be the first one you
Okay.
sell,
Okay.
right? And the reason I like this property is
Look at
because,
that, look at that driveway.
right, right.
That's a sexy ass driveway for a pad split, right?
Mhm.
Like our value is unlike a retail value. Our value is on the inside of the house, right? But the outside of the house matters so that we can keep the predators off of us to leave us alone to allow us to run our business on the inside. That's how I view it, right? It's like this is kind of fun because this is a 1600 square feet. And I love 1600 square feet in Florida because you get what you get. There's no basement, right? 1600 livable square feet is what you're looking at. So when I look at this property, it's going to be like a heavy build. Like this looks like this was a Florida room. But this is to me is a little bit wacky because I have a hard time kind of visualizing where the rooms are going to go. But the pictures tell me that it's distressed enough that somebody bought it as a fix and flip and probably got stuck in the middle. So there's room on that 250 number that's just kind of posted. And then I kind of love the fact that you have a massive backyard. So I don't know what Orlando is currently doing right now around ADUs, but that's a fun one. Let's go back to the listing here. Taniqua, let's talk. Let's
Okay.
look at this thing. How did I find it? I just kept looking for things that in the price ranges, anywhere between 250 and 300, 350. I look for anything over 1,500 square feet, minimum of 2 bathrooms. I'm hoping it's not
Mhm.
a half bathroom, but I love the fact that it's a fixer upper. You got to do some work on it. If I were to go ahead and start looking at this property, for me, I know that we got some form of equity based upon the work that I'm going to do. And
Got it.
because, and this is almost maybe too much because I have to rebuild the entire house. But like, whenever I see some form in there, I know there's equity to be discussed. Um,
How common is it for them or for an investor to add additional bathrooms? Are we
oh, all
mainly
the
just
time,
bedrooms?
all the time. Let me tell you why.
Okay.
I have a host that just bought a 10-bedroom house from an existing host and he's converting it to a 7 and he's making 3 of them ensuite bathrooms because the price differential between having your own full bath here
Mhm.
is between $800. These two are sharing a bathroom upstairs and this one
Okay.
has its own full bath. So imagine it's a $200 swing a month
Mhm. By
for
adding.
perpetuality.
Okay.
So bathrooms are really important. And then people don't view it as much in the beginning because they don't operate the business yet. But your second house that people will look at, they'd be like, start me out at 3 bathrooms because it
Okay.
changes the ratio of how many bathrooms. Like we accept a minimum of 4-to-1, but now we actually want, you know, more people are successfully booking rooms faster when they tell you what the listing looks like. And it tells you 2-to-1 ratio or 3-to-1 ratio because the member experience is starting to get to the forefront. So think about Airbnb, right? It used
Hmm.
to be look at the outside of the house. Now they're talking about like, oh, you can go to Pigeon Forge and go to Dolly World and all these different things that are like the experience of the person that's going to be staying there.
Okay.
So this
Got it.
specific property, let's dig in, right? price check, area check. Like if I go back to this map over here, Bobby, any questions or concerns about where this house actually resides
Let
from
me
a
see.
local neighborhood
Plus
area, just
Silver
south of
Star. So
Hawasasi? Yeah.
yeah, we are, let's see, Silver Star. So we're back in that kind of like
The Pine Hills area.
north of Pine Hills. So you see Pine Hills there
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
on the bottom. Once again, it's very much I've been in all these areas, and there's fine neighborhoods here. It just, the problem with the issue with Pine Hills is just the fact that like it has a reputation.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel as if, honestly, that reputation should be starting to change some, because a lot of people have found that a lot of the investment opportunity is there. So that's why you see a lot in that area.
Yeah.
And there's fine neighborhoods out there. I'm just saying, it's just like anywhere else. I mean, you go to the wrong little spot, and then you're like, oh, okay, this is what they used to talk
Yeah.
about. Like
It
So,
they used
seems
to.
it makes sense though, especially that area in Pine Hills, because a lot of, the Caribbeans and they catch the bus in that area.
okay.
So
And then
I'm not
you've
surprised.
got the one thing that you've got happening
Mhm.
as well is, if we go, let's see, Silver Star, Hiawassee. So over in the off of OBT and all that, like you've got a
Mhm.
lot of expansion happening in this, and what they call what do they call in the packing district. So
Okay.
you're starting to get some hipper stuff happening around that area. It's not like crazy close to it, but
Okay.
like, but I don't, I'd have to see the neighborhood. And like,
Mhm.
to me, this house looks very much livable. It doesn't look like a bad neighborhood, at least from the pictures on the outside.
Okay.
Like, you know, you can
Yeah.
tell the rough neighborhood. This doesn't seem like one.
So
Per
you ready
se.
for the kicker on this house? So
What is
this is where the financing piece starts to make some sense, Janico. If you were to look at this bad boy and I go to the street view, I go to the map and I look at the lot lines. You're asking me to
Okay.
pay you 250. It's probably a little bit high, so I'm going to go a little bit lower and probably say like I'm going to acquire this thing somewhere in the 215, 220 area, right? Now, how is this house going to appraise,
Yeah, I
right?
can't really see the lots next the like the actual numbers.
Okay.
So it
So
looks
like
like up to 300.
right. So like it looks like if I
Okay.
buy this thing, the next door is 300. That's the high water
Oh,
mark.
okay.
This house over here is listed at 218. So I've got a 300 over here, a lot of
Mm.
250s, a lot of 260s. So if I'm looking at this thing, I'm probably going to be coming in around 275. That would be kind of like high end, low end, and somewhere in the middle. So 260, 275 area. So I'm
Okay.
not getting a lot of equity in the house, right? I'm not gonna be able to burr this deal. So like I would look over here and be like, hey, when did this guy buy it at 218? Right. And I would start comparing. But essentially, I would pin this price against this price in terms of me trying to acquire it, because at
Okay.
218, I got $80,000, $60,000 to $80,000 to play with on my renovation. And because this house is like I got to put in all the walls, I'm gonna have that issue.
Hmm.
You following me? Like from the investor
Yep.
standpoint, that's how I'm thinking, and that's how I want you to think as you're presenting deals to me.
Okay. Based on what sold in that area and the best. Okay.
Yeah, you want to lead with the math in my world because I don't
Mhm.
care what the house looks like. I won't even look at it unless you start showing me deals that
The
meet
numbers.
this
Okay.
cash on cash return, if that's the kind of investor that you're
So
speaking with.
so let's come up with some. So this is something I'm challenging you with, Quentin. I think that there's like basic, like we can come up with 3, 4, 5 rules of thumb,
Yep. Yep.
right? That are super easy. Like for instance,
Your
if
1%
if
rule. That's what you're equating it to, right?
we something like exactly. So
So the,
let's
the
say,
1% rule equation is 50%. 50% of your doors have to cover my mortgage.
okay, so 50%. Okay, so that's a rule of thumb. Let's
It,
put that one. But in
it's,
particular, for this,
yeah.
because I think this financing piece is very important.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So for instance, if you say typically typically the purchase price should be X% of the ARV, right? Because like if you because you want that 75% on the refi
Hmm.
to at least cover what you bought it for sure. right? But also some
Okay.
fix-up costs, correct?
Mhm, mhm.
Right? So you could say, hey, you know, the purchase price, like if I'm looking at this and I say, okay, listen, it looks like ARVs in this neighborhood with something remodel is going to be 300.
Okay.
What percentage should the purchase price be to even be in the ballpark? Because I need to buy it at the right price and I also got to put money into it. And then when I do that 75% cash out on the DSCR loan, I got to get this. So those little things I think would be super helpful because
Love
there
it.
are a couple of those nuances in this where if we equip these agents with those couple of rules of
Mhm.
thumb,
Mhm.
it's a game changer.
Love it. Okay. I'll start from the top. The reason I use the map function is to get a quick gauge of what I think the price value is going to be, right? So instead of going in like right now, Bobby, how does your team do comps for you guys have a MLS
We use
MLS.
comp,
So
MLS.
like
right?
I would essentially do what you're doing. I mean, I don't usually, you know, in the past, like Zillow's been always kind of like, you know, it's kind of hit or miss on their valuations.
Mm-hmm.
So but you know, I would I would go into this neighborhood, I would look back 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if I couldn't find much in 6 months, uh, I would go back a year because, and then I make adjustments, right? But ideally, what I would want to find is a property that, I mean, in a perfect world, I'd find one that was remodeled because that's going to be
Mhm.
Yep.
my
Yep.
best ARV comp there. But let's say it wasn't. Let's say everything needs a little bit of updating. Well, I know that I can add a little bit to mine because when mine's done, it's going to be better. But I also can't over improve, right?
Yep.
So I'll come up with that number based on the data that I see. How long are things taking to sell? You know, I'm looking at active pendings and solds because you know there might be one that's active, and you can say, oh, listen, actually, they're not really selling very fast at 300 right now. You know, this one's at 300. It's a beautiful home.
Oh, look at
You
this
know,
bad boy.
yeah.
Then
So,
you could write down this address because you could probably sell
Mhm.
me this one too.
well, that
And
neighborhood looks like a strong one because I think there was another. Yeah, I saw a
yeah,
couple of them on that street. Uh,
but you see
that
the
looked like him.
delta that like, are we even in play? It goes back down to this
Look at all
simple.
those cars.
All those
Yeah.
cars. Mhm.
Perfect.
All right, you're starting to get it. You're starting to get it, right?
Yeah.
Um, I love this version simply because I found this property when I was looking at this property. I'm like, oh, I could buy this at 250 or this at 190, and my comp's going to be the same, right? Because it's a 2 mile radius or a half-mile radius. So based on all of these things, I can't cross over this major road, right? And I'm not embedded within this neighborhood. I only have like essentially one side of people that I'm going to offend. So same comping idea. And this is where you as a realtor are super helpful. You have the tools to tell me, all right, what's the real comp on this bad boy?
Mhm.
So now here I am looking at this thing and I'm saying, oh, I have the capacity to um, buy this house at 190, and is it viable, right? So we look at this house and there's all sorts of things that make sense. It's a
It's 2,000
2,000
square
square
feet.
feet, right?
Mhm.
Versus 1,700. So I picked up essentially a bedroom. Um, and this is a bedroom. I have a bath. I don't have to do too much in here. This is a really good size bedroom. It's probably going to be the ensuite. I'm assuming this is a rental because no one really lives like that on the regular. A lot of storage crap in here. This, I don't think, is a kitchen. So this would essentially look like another bedroom for me. And I start just kind of doing the math in my head. So I'm like, all right, I'm at 5, I'm at 6.
Mhm.
I don't, again, I look for stuff as I'm looking. I don't see any like water damage on the ceilings. So I don't really have like roof issues. Whatever room this is, it's got an exterior door. I don't know if it's the front door, but it could be a bedroom. Um, I think this is the garage. God, I hope so. But so this is the kind of things where I look at it, I'm like, the more effed up it is, the more, viable it is for me to
Okay.
build equity in there. So I kind of like this house a lot, from just a straight visual. Let's start going into kind of what you see under here. No
ADU in the
HOA,
back.
ADU in the back with additional driveway. Amen. Like
Mhm.
ADU for me is
Mhm.
just more living space, right? Um, 2 driveways, that just means parking. It's amazing. Short sale approved, can quickly close, no HOA, investor special. Like let's go.
This looks like gold right here.
Right. And the only thing that you have to be comfortable with is the neighborhood. Like
Okay.
if I go here, am I going to get scared to go here at night? And there's some investors that don't give a
Right.
shit. They don't. They don't, and like this is what we're facing in Jacksonville. Guys came into
Yeah.
Jacksonville and they kept buying properties like, this is amazing. And they're like, my occupancy is low in Jacksonville
Because the neighborhood.
because you bought it in the most gangster ass Compton neighborhood ever.
Right.
And the members move in and they're like, oh my God, I didn't know that it's this bad north of one. Right. So like you got a nerve to charge 203 and you had done an amazing renovation, but I'm right next to a 158 and it's still in the same worst ghetto.
Mhm.
Right. So I could pay 203 here, or I can go down here and pay 175, or I can go across 95 over here and pay 206. From the member side, am I going to live in the hood in like Magna Gardens or whatever, or am I going to go over here in
Mhm.
Urban Core? Right.
Right.
That's what you got to start thinking is like of the operational business. When you're talking to me as the investor, you say, look, this is a on paper, a fantastic buy. In operations, if I sat there and drove through it at 8 o'clock at night, would I be terrified? I've got some properties where property managers don't go to houses at in the PM, right? So I
Mhm.
love this. It's
Okay.
got good street parking. Obviously, I've got a ton of parking over here. I'm not offending anybody. It's already a rental. I've got an ADU in the back with 2
It's a
additional
lot of
driveways.
parking. Yeah.
Like this is actually civilized Florida because I'd expect this truck, to be on the front lawn. And I'd make fun of y'all all the time. Like I just expect him to be here. And that's like true Florida for me. But like getting back to this property, you start seeing some of the things that should jump off your list, especially on the initial casting of the net. I'm looking for investor. I'm looking for somewhere there's equity for short sale. I'm looking at no HOA. Like they'll tell you all these things, right? There's a reason why this is on the market for 116 days. And then that's for you to try to figure out, is that opportunity or is that somebody
Mhm.
came through and said there's a foundational problem?
Okay.
You have to think about my second purchase from you when you're selling me the first one. That's how the realtors that are really successful, because like
For
every
sure.
single person is trying to buy 5 of these. And the better you get, the better you're just going to be able to identify the properties and like who's looking. And then 3 or 4 people are going to jump up to you and buy the property.
So would you say, because I'm thinking this will be a really good one,
Mhm.
um, as far as, neighborhood though, that it could affect the member experience and the occupancy.
So this is on
Um,
you. This is where you go to
yeah.
padsplit.com and be like, look, surrounding comps, this is what it looks
Mm,
like. I don't have anything right by here, right? Why not? I don't know. According to this map, when I look at it, right, where does this thing fall? It falls north of Silver Star, so it's right above the little lake. So if I'm here, this is the lake that's talking about. It's right
mm-hmm.
here.
Yeah.
Why are no houses here? I don't know. And this is where your localized understanding of what's actually going on in this area comes into play, because you're essentially pitching it to me,
Okay.
right? I don't know why. So it's this lot here, and it's pretty much right here, I believe.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
might be it might be worth driving it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
That's what I was thinking too.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
listen, I've it's been a long time. I'm familiar with Powers Drive. I haven't been down it in a while, but like I've also been off of Silver Star and gone into
Yeah.
like I look around that neighborhood and it looks decent. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like it
Yeah.
looks decent, but it would be worth a drive because it looks decent,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right? Like these are not bad houses. I mean, these aren't bad cars. I mean, you got an old Mercedes, I think you got a
Mm-hmm.
Hyundai. I mean, like, these are
Listen,
professional people
this
that
is
are
a
living
rental
here.
neighborhood. Exactly. It's a
Yeah,
high
and
rental neighborhood. What that means is that you eliminate the risk of neighbor complaints. right?
Yeah.
So if that means that this is a good deal, then you go back to the map and be like, wait a minute, maybe this bad boy is a good deal too, if I can get that price down to a normal piece.
Mhm.
Yep. And then
You
that
know,
becomes a good farm area for you,
yeah,
and you say,
exactly.
hey, actually, this is a nice pocket that people haven't really been exploring.
Uh-huh.
Let look. I think this would be worth the drive. Because it looks like I said. I've been in Pine Hills and driven neighborhood. I was like, dude, the problem is that it used to be called Crime Hills.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's been hard to get that stigma off. But
Oh,
once again, it's like any other place, right? Like as long as you stay in certain areas, then you're good. Like
mhm.
I've got rough areas in downtown. Like I just don't
Yeah.
go there. And they're literally I could literally I'm half less than half a mile away from a rough area right
Mhm.
now as I sit. But on this side of I-4, I'm all good. You know what I
So
mean?
this thing's
So
pending. Um, but
yeah, this
it
one's pending, but you might still have a shot.
but
You
you
never
you
know.
get the idea of what we're looking for
Okay.
is ultimately the exercise. There will be plenty more like this. There always are. Don't get hung up on FOMO, right? But it's the skill of the nuance of identifying a property and why nobody else is looking, right? Because you're competing against retail buyers here.
Right.
But if you can identify on the retail, they tell you everything. Oh, he got $50,000 off of this price. That means that 250 price is now competing against this 190 price. Right? So I'm go back to the 250 and be like, that guy just bought his house for 190. Right? And that 190, that house
Okay.
down the street, way more attractive. But from an investor standpoint, I'm looking at this 3.2 and I'm looking at it is simply becoming a 6.2. So I look at the pricing on PadSplit's site and I'm like, all right, if this guy's charging 190, I can probably say comfortably, these rooms are gonna are gonna come in here. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll just use this. These rooms are gonna come in here and we'll just say 190, right? We'll say that there's 6 of them. So according to this, at 100%
Hmm.
occupied, I'm gonna make roughly $4,900. I just want to show you this as a simple tool.
Okay.
And I can come in here at 100%, it's going to give me $4,900, but then I change the vacancy number. I use 85%. Some people, use 10. What's changing is this number. This number down here takes the 100% occupied and then it takes into the vacancy rate that you're doing here. And then we use this for the green box of money making.
And for the cash on cash return,
Yep.
what is a sweet spot for that?
People are looking anywhere over 15. 20
Okay.
is like a go. So
Okay.
I looked at this property, not the 251. I'm talking about the 191, right? So let's say we looked at 190 being the purchase price. I used 3% for closing costs. Is that reasonable for y'all?
About 3 to 4.
Okay. Damn, Florida be ganking people.
Well,
Um,
it depends if they're financing or
right,
not.
right. So for me, I'd say 290, 280 is probably like a reasonable appraisal rate. Sometimes I'll
Okay.
fiddle with this because we get typically some higher numbers. But right now, I don't know what you guys are seeing, but I'm seeing appraisals come in relatively low. So here's the financing education that makes sense. So if the total appraisal is going to be 290, the bank's going to give me a 75% of that if I can get to the 1-to-1 DSCR ratio, which is really important here. This
Okay.
conversation makes a lot of sense. So I got to come in here and say, let's just say conservatively, I'm going to put $30,000 in renovations into this, and you're going to get you'll figure out kind of like where that number is based upon how much renovations you need to do. At that house, the 190 house, I'm probably only looking at putting 1 or 2 more walls up and then the furniture. So imagine it's going to be 6 bedrooms at $6,000 for furniture. I'm just using round numbers at $1,000, and then I got to put
Hmm.
in a couple more walls. So I'd say $30,000 conservatively. Um, if the loan's going to be 217, my total project's going to be 226, right? So that means that like essentially the money left in the deal is $10,000. Are you following what I'm saying
Okay.
so far? So
Okay.
they do cash on cash comparisons. After I get my loan, how much is left in the deal? So total project, if this is very simple math, 190 acquisition, closing, it's inspections. This is 30,000 bucks I got to put in for renovations and everything. Total project 226.7. After I take out my loan of 217.5, I'm left with 9,200 bucks in this deal. Now look at your cash on cash return. Imagine then if I go back in here and the guy said it's ADU in the back. So I just throw in another room for that ADU number and look what it did to my cash on cash return.
Okay.
My God, what happens if I make it more conservatively at 15% vacancy rate? I'm still at 33% cash on cash return.
So basically one thing you got to think about, Janico, is like this deal is truly done once they get their money out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So this is
Okay.
why I wanted him to have that. So when you're looking at this, you say, hey, ARV, so this part on the top right where it says after repair value and that
Appraisal.
DSCR
Yeah.
and that DSCR loan, right? You're
Yes.
like, oh, wait a minute. I'm gonna get $217,000 back from a bank once I'm done with this. And then so if you look on the left, you say, okay, look, I bought this for 190. I got 5,700 closing costs. I got 1,000 in due diligence, and I'm gonna put 30 to renovate. So I really got total 226 in this deal. But once I'm done and we reappraise and the bank gives me my DSCR, they're gonna give me $217,000 and $500 back. So now, when you do the numbers here in the loan information, you look down and you say, "Oh wait, so I'm actually only into this for 9,200
Okay.
because
Okay.
I got all this money back." And so that's
Gotcha.
my cash in the deal. And now I'm basing that return that whatever I'm actually getting the actual
Look at
revenue.
this thing, right?
What's the net revenue I'm getting a month?
4,800 bucks.
I'm getting 4,800 net,
I'm sorry, $3,800 is
and
expense.
then 46,000 a year.
Yeah.
So if I take 9,200 and divide it by $46,000 a year,
You're
I
getting a
should get
33.
33%. That means I spent 9,200 and I'm
Okay.
getting back $46,000 a year.
Yeah, you're
That's
getting
the
$3 to
cash on
$1
cash.
back.
What's that?
You're getting 3 to 1 on your dollar.
That's not bad, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
and that's after you're paying the mortgage. I mean, that's including your cost, right, of paying the loan.
Okay. Okay.
Go back to
So
Bobby's rule. See
Is
this
that
number
the
here?
cap or?
No,
that's
cap
not
it.
the
Cap
cap.
is
That's
this.
not what they would consider cap
Oh,
rate.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, your cap rate would be everything you spent to get that property, right? Which would
It's
be
this number
it's 226, and
divided by the
then
gross amount, this number.
well, no, by the net amount, which would be the 46, and that should give you the cap rate.
Okay. The
Oh, they
amount
do the, I'm
spent
sorry,
divided
net
by the
operating
income.
income, right, Bob?
Yeah.
My bad.
The
Yes.
operating
Yep.
income.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So that's going to be lower because it's taken into account your full expense.
Yeah.
So that's going to
Okay.
be, it's on here somewhere, isn't it?
No, this one doesn't have it.
226.
So
Yeah.
this would be this
Yeah.
number
So do the calculation. So do 46
divided by this number, right? It's a
46
it's a
divided,
5
no,
cap.
46 divided by 226. What do you
Okay.
get? We do 46 divided
20%.
20. No.
Wait, let me see.
I think it's the other
46.
way around.
Is it 46? Yeah, I think it is too.
46,000. No, it's gonna be a decimal divided by 226,000 is yeah,
Isn't it?
It is 20%. It is a 20.
Yeah.
But cap, it's 20.
20.3.
So you're telling me it is total project cost, this number divided by net operating income.
No, it's
The operating
net
income
operating income
divided
divided
by-
by total
There you
price.
go. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know I was confused.
So then you get 0.2, which is 20, is a 20.5% cap, which is
Enormous.
really good.
Yeah.
That's really good. But remember, we added that extra room in there too, so that's why it's super high. But that's a great, I mean, listen, anybody would take a 20.54% cap. That's all day long. Most investors that are doing long-term rentals are doing 7 to 10% cap rates.
That's a straight yes. If you show up with an 8 cap on a long-term rental,
Mm-hmm.
that's a go. That's a go, no go answer.
And you're getting 20%. So let's wrap this up.
Okay.
So one thing I wanted to point back out, okay? What Bobby was saying was, will this even qualify? So this is your mortgage information based on 8%. I mean, this is 7%. Like right now, it's probably closer to 8.25 for a DSCR loan.
Okay.
Which changes this number by $200, right? That's a big number to change. So that 1.25% rate change, look what it did to your numbers. You literally lost 3% off of your cash on cash. So what happens is this $1,600, then I go back to the property itself, and this is where another beauty of this map comes into, is you start looking for rental rates, 1.8 over here. And you should start looking
the rental
at
income. Okay.
Because why? Because the rental income is how they calculate this DSCR loan. They don't ask you for the PadSplit rent. What they want to see is, can you cover, if you were to do this as a long-term rental, what the average market rate is at for that area? And if you say it's $1,800, then I know that I'm going to get a 1-to-1 ratio for $1,600. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Because I qualify at a 1-to-1 ratio or higher, the bank will allow me to take 75% of this appraised number.
So basically, it's like this, Janiqua. That principal and interest payment has to be covered by the normal long-term rents of that area, right? So 1,800 covers. Matter of fact, it over covers that, right? So they're looking for it to be a 1-to-1 match or over, right? So
got it. It has to at least be that 1,600 amount.
Exactly, or more.
Okay.
Right. So, but 1-to-1 is usually the basis for a DSCR loan on a residential property. They're looking that rental rate, when they pull it up, they use I forgot what it's called, but they use different things or even the appraiser will say, this is what the typical rents are for the area.
Fair market value. Yeah. Fair market rent is the average. Yeah.
Now, one thing I will say, and this might be a good tool for you to know, Quentin, I just literally spoke to a DSCR lender, and I'm getting signed on with them. And I was like, they're reading me all their qualifications and stuff. And I'm like, well, what's your differentiator? Because I didn't hear anything that was like, revolutionary besides the fact that they only do DSCR. Like a lot of lenders do hard money, DSCR. They're like, listen, we decided to become DSCR specialists. Like, we just knock these out. But I said, well, what's your differentiator? And he said, well, about 30% of what we do, 35% of what we do are short-term rentals, STRs. And the reason is because we have our own underwriting department for STRs, and we don't use the traditional rents.
They use their DNA. Like,
they're going to use, they're saying, hey, we don't use that. We actually have our own department that will take into consideration short-term rental income versus that long-term rental. So that might open up some new deals for some folks, because this would be more, if you were to say, hey, I'm going to do this as an STR, than a short-term rental property or something like that, then they might be able to say, hey, like, if you didn't get the 1-to-1 on the traditional rent, you might be able to get that financing, because they're counting it as short-term rental rents, which are going to be higher. But right now, as we're talking, that is one of the kind of things that you need to be nuanced and understand as well, is that it has to be that 1-to-1 ratio as well. So you have to also look at traditional rents in the area to do that underwriting with that spreadsheet. So we just showed you, right? So I think this was great, man. I'm getting better at it, just doing it with you.
And it's making more sense.
Yes. So it's it.
You do this how often do you do this?
I do this every Tuesday, but every other Tuesday, but I can flip it to once a week, because now you guys are actively looking. I think it makes more sense.
Yeah.
right? And
Oh,
I think
well,
it'll make more sense for y'all to
besides
start
Janiqua,
meeting.
who else was on?
Just the three of us.
There's the three of us. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So we need to get everybody else on because this was like super helpful. But it
I'll send
helped.
this recording back out to you, Bob.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Send me that recording. I'll
Hmm.
send it to everyone. Um, and then, at what point, because Janico asked me this past week, at what point are we going to assign an investor? Like what do you need to hear from these guys for you to connect them with an investor?
No, this is it. So this is my point. If you guys are comfortable with this, I'm going to send in an email to um, the investor group that says, look, these are three other investors that are realtors that have gone through this training. It's up to them. Like, I don't know how you guys individually do
Mhm.
that at that point. Like, I would love all of you guys pitching properties because he's looking to buy in quantity. He gets and this is, Bobby, this is the fun part for you. He gets 100% financing for all his acquisitions. He's
Okay.
huge. He's huge.
So
Um,
so so yeah, I'll be on the call with him initially. So what I would like to do, because essentially what I'm trying to do is start a team, right,
mhm,
with it.
mhm.
So I have to know the investors that are coming in so that I can do referral agreements with Janiqua
Yep.
in order to do this stuff. But for this first one, let's go ahead and we'll do it together, Janiqua, right? And
Okay.
if this guy's ready, let's do it together. We'll qualify him, but then we'll set up a process, you and me, Quentin, where it's like, hey, when these guys come in, what's going to be the best way? Like I'm going to have, maybe we set up you know, like a Calendly thing where I was like, okay, cool. Like, okay, Janique was ready. So you send me this guy. We go through like a kind of a pre-qual situation, and then I send them over to Janique, and Janique just takes it and runs with it.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
But
so
I think I'm going to tell you that our larger hosts, they're just looking for deal flow. Like they will, I don't know how they want to do it, but they're not going to hitch their wagon to only Bobby and be like, I can't take deal flow from
oh,
anybody else,
oh
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's any investor. And
Yeah.
we understand that. It's just about me making sure that I have those referral agreements with the agents that we're
Got it.
sending
Got it.
deals to. But yeah,
And
yeah, you're not going to get that's investors in general. But
mhm, mhm.
if Janiqua, it's like anytime, investors, if you bring them a deal, they'll buy it from you. That's it. That's
Yeah.
just the way it is.
That's
We
why this exercise of being able to identify properties, we have the buyers. Bobby, I'll set you up with this team here, get you guys set up under whatever you need to get set up so that your team can work. Um, but it's essentially, weekly deal flow before you present it over the next couple of weeks. If we want to meet every single week and be like, hey, here are the three properties that I came up with,
Yes. Okay.
yes or no. And then, on every Wednesday, we'll start presenting the deals that make the best sense. So if you need in the beginning a rubber stamp from me to say like, look, these are the things that I look at for that property, and then it's a good to go, and then you put it in a form that they're consuming it like this, and then we can just start presenting deal flow for them to say yes or no to.
Can you do me a favor on this spreadsheet where you put in the rents?
Hmm.
Because you're having them go, I know you were going into like the spreadsheet portion and putting your like it on PadSplit, it's done by weekly rents.
Yeah.
And so if we could put a column in there where I could just put $191 and it would automatically spit out
Yep. Yep.
823 or
Yep. Yep.
whatever. So
So you
let's put
want
a
me to
column.
insert a column right here at weekly, and then it rolls up to monthly?
That's it, because these guys are going to go into the pad split system, and that way they don't have it'll just automatically calculate. Like, maybe
Perfect.
it's taking 191 and going 4.3 months or whatever it's doing.
Yep.
So just that way it'll be easier for Janique whenever anybody else, when they see that, it'll automatically calculate monthly, and then we'll have that.
Perfect. Will
Good,
do.
good stuff, man.
Okay.
Well,
Looks good. Thank you.
I appreciate
Anything else jump out at you, Janiqua, as like anything
Not
missing?
so not so much. A lot of the properties that I come across, they're off market, connected to some investor
Hmm.
platforms. So I'm able to find those, and I'll go ahead and just, type in the numbers and see if it makes sense as far as the cash on cash and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I love PropStream. When I see like linked properties, I immediately go to look at the other ones and I start breaking down of these 5 that this person owns. I'm going to talk about 3 of them.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like that's how you get that off market action going. Because like tired landlords, amen. Let's start scooping the crap out of the tired landlords because you already know that's in a rental area. It already starts checking off boxes for you. And if you can actually talk to them and I'll buy a tape. I have an investor looking to build a portfolio of 100 of these. How many houses do you really want to sell?
Mhm.
And if nothing else, because you know our exit and you know how to do this spreadsheet, if you turn around and talk to a tired landlord, and now all of a sudden you have a new customer. And that's a
Makes
referral
sense.
piece. There's all sorts of
Yeah.
stuff that's going on there. Start with the asset. The buyers are there. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, makes sense.
This is
Thank
fun.
you.
Yep.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you. We'll keep this going. Let's maybe let's do it again. Let's see if we can get more people into the next one,
Yeah.
or let's put it in that group email and see how many people can make next Tuesday or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And
It's
let's see
getting
if
a
we
little
get
hairy with the holidays, but yeah, let's see if we can squeeze one more in before the uh the Christmas run.
okay.
Mhm.
If we get the rest of the folks that went through the initial one, we'll go through one of these again for them. If they have any properties that they want to talk about beforehand, we can do that. Let me see if I can get this webinar chat stuff fixed. But if we can get the other 6 realtors through that component of it, I'd be much more comfortable getting them through introductions and having them show up with addresses. Hey, does this make sense? And then we can start punching holes in it.
Awesome, man.
Okay.
This is cool. Thanks, Bobby.
Brother, awesome, man. Appreciate you. And we'll set one up for the next one. Just put it in the email and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. See you, bud.
All
All
right.
right.
Thanks, guys.
Bye,
Take care.
Janiqua.
Bye.
Bye.